The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.
For all of us to focus more on what processes are we doing and why, and what are we getting out of it? Because everyone competes differently. With some people, it's about white glove. With some people, it's about speed. With some people, it's about automation. There's not one right answer, but for whatever we do, there's a process underneath that, and getting smarter about, hey, what changes should we be making this year to either be a better white glove or a faster fast or a more automated automation platform? That's where I think we're going to get beyond just a 15% contribution of soft cost reduction.
Are you speeding the energy transition? Here at the Clean Power Hour, our hosts Tim Montague and John Weaver bring you the best in solar, batteries, and clean technologies every week. Want to go deeper into decarbonization? We do too. We're here to help you understand and command the commercial, residential, and utility solar, wind, and storage industries. So let's get to it. Together we can speed the energy transition.
Today on the Clean Power Hour, we're going to be talking to the co-founder of Helioscope. Helioscope is one of my all-time favorite tools for solar design, and it integrates with my other favorite tool, which is Energy Toolbase. Paul Grana, the co-founder and now managing director of Helioscope within Aurora, because Aurora bought Helioscope a couple of years ago. So we're just going to really focus as much as possible on Helioscope, but welcome to the show, Paul. This is a long time in the coming. I've wanted to interview you for a very long time, and it was through that through the Aurora conference this year that we got to know each other a little bit. That was a great event. We were talking about the IRA and the influence of the IRA on the industry. It's heady days. We're at RE Plus here in Vegas, RE 2023, together with 30,000 other energy professionals. The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by Dynawatts. If you're a solar PV asset manager or performance engineer, you need better data and better business intelligence. With Dynawatts' digital twin benchmarking technology, you get more accurate, efficient, and faster performance measurement results. The 4th generation Dino recently completed a technical review by DNV. You can download the report at dynawatts.com. That's DENOWATTS.com. Now back to the show. So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, Paul. How did you get interested in solar, and what inspired you to create Helioscope?
Sure, absolutely. And yeah, similar, happy to be on, kind of a long-time listener, first-time caller type of situation.
Thank you.
So my journey, I started 2008 initially with, so for those that have been around, Abound Solar, trying to make a module fab out in Colorado, doing CAD/TEL. Then from there I went into power electronics, and so this was now 2009, where I worked for a company called EIQ and then Tygo, both doing DC optimizers, and I spent about 4 years in the hardware side of the industry. And so it was honestly a great place to cut my teeth, because selling DC optimizers was super complicated. You get module level data. How do you tell a value story about that? You have low voltage safety shutoff capabilities. How do you tell a value story about that? You've got design capabilities. You can have longer strings. How do you tell a story about that? You've got more energy, the thing that everyone thinks about. So it was a really interesting value prop to have to kind of bring to market, and a great way to really get deep into the solar industry. And then that's what led to Helioscope. So to kind of connect the hardware to the software side, in about 2010, I had an intern, my future co-founder, and so that summer we were actually negotiating. So this is going to go way back. We were negotiating, if you recall, Solmetric. So of course, Sun Eye manufacturer. they have the Sunny Design tool, and still have, present tense. And Sunny Design tool at the time, so do you remember Solar Magic from National Semiconductor?
No.
They had a button in Sunny Design tool that was add Solar Magic. So again, this is 2009. There were about a dozen venture-backed or venture-backed equivalent startups. One of those was National Semiconductor, obviously massive player, had a DC optimizer product. So they convinced Solmetric to put a button into the software that said add Solar Magic and get a power boost, get an energy boost. So we were like, oh great, somebody solved the problem. We're just trying to sell hardware. So we were licensing that from the Solmetric team. And then at the 11th hour, they actually looked at the code that had come from National Semiconductor, and to their credit, we had signed. We were like, tell us where to send the money for a non-exclusive right just to use the math. And they said, please don't send us the money. We don't want to take the money. The code isn't worth anything. Like, we're going to take this out of our own product. So that knowledge of there really was nothing for calculating how much more energy you get with module level optimization versus central optimization, right? Like central inverter. And again, at the time, 2010, SolarEdge and Enphase weren't yet the winners. It was just like a dozen venture-backed companies. But Paul Gibbs knew that a couple of them are going to win. I mean, I don't think any of us knew how big they would get, honestly, between the two of them, but that's a story for another day. And so he started building this software back in business school in his second year. He kind of went back to business school. He's like, I know there's a problem. The world at this time is just PV syst and PV watts, that's it, you know? And then, so he started building what we thought of as module level PV syst. Fast forward a couple years, he graduates. We start working together with him as a consultant with, I was still with Tygo. We would have a mutual customer who would say, hey, I've got a commercial rooftop, I've got shading, I expect that optimizers will give me more energy, but I don't want to hear a marketing speak 2 to 10%, I want to hear engineering speak. So if you can give me like a real answer with real math, I will potentially buy this stuff. And so we did that for about 2-ish years, where he was building this software. He would run a model for a customer, and then we would kind of present it, and of course it was part of how we would sell a Tygo system. And then of course, as that grew, like, it was natural for me to join him as a co-founder, and then we kind of like did our thing from there. And then the last point that I'll mention there is, notice a lot of the value is module level PV syst. So when we launched in 2014, we thought of ourselves as module level PV syst. That happens to be based in the cloud, that happens to have some design capabilities. And then as soon as we started charging for it, we found that there was a lot more value in the easy to use AutoCAD like alternative, that for especially commercial sales teams, basically 1 hour of training and they were off to the races and able to do their own designs. So it wasn't a pivot per se, but we really changed our messaging to be 80-20 modular PV syst and then a little bit of AutoCAD to we're a cloud-based, easy to use AutoCAD that anyone on your team can use. And oh, by the way, the physics is actually really darn good, but like that's probably not why you're buying. You're probably buying because of the design capabilities. So yeah, that was kind of our initial.
It's incredible how easy it is to learn how to use Helioscope. I was just instantly in love with that platform, and I'm not afraid of learning new software. Au contraire, the ramp on Energy Toolbase was brutal comparatively, and that really caused me some grief. But once I got it dialed in, it was amazing. So wow, I had no idea that you worked at Tygo. That's cool.
Yeah.
And it's funny when you talk about MLPEs as a way to get more energy. For me as a designer, it's more about rapid shutdown or some other objective, and often I had some headaches, getting it to work, and so I would always try to do string inverters if I could. No MLPEs, but. Anyway, it's neither here nor there.
I'm not going to touch that with you. I'll let you be the voice on that one.
So when did Helioscope become a commercial product?
February 2014. In fact, Valentine's Day, it was a Friday, was the day that, so we had about 800 beta users, so free trial users. And then February 14, 2014 was the date that it was like, if you haven't paid us, you're losing access to it. So, yeah.
And truly, you were disrupting PV watts really more than anything, right? The DOE free platform And I mean, PV-Syst, it's amazing how PV-Syst has persisted to this day with this very, command line, crunchy, old school approach to software, which I abhor now. And I've never, and you have to be quite technical to use PV-Syst as well. Now there's Plant Predict, which is probably giving PV-Syst a run for its money. I had David Spieldenner on the show. I like that platform a lot.
Yeah, we respect them too. I'd say a couple things. Well, I'd say we respect both PV-Syst and Plant Predict. What I'd say about PV-Syst is they deserve credit. I mean, they did invent the physics that's used on all of our biggest solar projects, and so at that level, they deserve the physics credit. And the way that we think about them, so we coexist with them a lot. Like, in fact, let me say it this way. Whenever a customer comes up to me and says, hey, I'm thinking about canceling PV-Syst, I say to them, please do not do that. Please don't. Because PV-Syst can do 100 things. When you want to handcraft a weather file, PV-Syst can do that. When you want to handcraft an inverter and say, I'm going to buy a megawatt inverter, but firmware limited to 985 and a certain power factor, PV-Syst lets you do that. We don't have an inverter editor. Now, we support OND files, we support PAN files, so we love to coexist with PV-Syst. So it's like, if you want to do something fancy and weird, PV-Syst has the tooling to do every fancy, weird thing you could imagine, and then just upload that PAN file into Helioscope, let's say it's a module, and then you can still use Helioscope for doing a lot of the early work, iterating with the customer, value engineering, things like that. And so it's like there's a long tail that PV-Syst does. When people cancel PV-Syst, then that means the next month when they need to edit a module, they're going to be mad at us for not having that module or inverter or weather file editor, So we actually, kind of respect them and have no problem coexisting because, frankly, as far as we're concerned, Helioscope can still be used for what I think of as the most important steps in the process, right? Getting the customer engaged, figuring out what you're going to build, squeezing out cost with value engineering, and then if the last step you have to run a PV-Syst report, okay, that's annoying, but it's whatever. It plays a role. There's elements of, frankly, the fact that it's desktop software has good, like the fact that you can put it on a thumb drive has good benefits for the industry. We're cloud-based. We're never going to let you download a Helioscope to a thumb drive and attach it to your wet ink signed contracts, right? So like, there's a lot that's built into the PV-Syst process. It's way harder to unseat than it seems. But to your point, when First Solar showed us what they were building with Plant Predict, one of the things we said to him is like, dang, you guys really are building a PV-Syst killer. And like I said, when we started, we were like, we're going after PV-Syst. But then within 30 days, we were like, actually, we're going after AutoCAD. But they really have focused on going after PV-Syst. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
So then I started using Aurora just on a very side basis, helping a friend in California who had a resi company, and it was resi only. I come from the commercial EPC world, and big flat roofs. That was our bread and butter. And Aurora was a little steeper learning curve. Different though, as we were saying in the pre-show, I consider them apples and oranges. They're very complementary but different, and you can get a three-dimensional design out of Aurora, which is very sexy, and I think that does appeal to consumers. But I find that when I talk to other installers, they're quite strongly opinionated that they prefer Helioscope for commercial and often prefer Aurora for residential. Aurora, I see the acquisition, and you tell me, but I see that play as a way for them to get a good commercial tool in their toolbox, right? Even though they were chasing commercial with their own platform and talking about things like using AI to identify keepouts. I mean, keepouts are one of the banes of a designer's existence when you're on a big roof with, 500 small keepouts.
Yep.
That is just time consuming, and it's a good use case for automation. The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America. the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more. But tell us about the acquisition. How did that come about? And what has it been like integrating your company into this totally other company?
Yeah, totally. So the acquisition was, as you said, about 2 years ago. And to be honest, it was started by a third company who shall remain nameless, where we were heads down just doing our thing, building Helioscope. And then this other company said, we want to buy you guys. We got to a number that was like, we would be remiss not to say yes to this. And we were very close to signing with that company when the Aurora press release went out that they had raised $250 million. And up until that point, they were not on our list of potential acquirers because they had raised about $75 million at that point. But when you raise 5 and then 20 and then 50, which don't get me wrong, is a lot of money, that's the kind of money that funds payroll. But when they then raised 250, it took us an hour or two and we were like, wait a minute, you can't spend that on payroll. It would be impossible to spend that on payroll. That's got to be a rainy day fund. And so literally that day is when I called up Sam, my counterpart over at Aurora, and we hammered out all the details within 4 days. So it was a super fast process. So you were about to sell to a different company than
That's
Aurora.
Right.
Yep.
And realized that Aurora was now in a position to make an acquisition, and you said, hey, would you consider?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you had a relationship with the owner over there?
Yeah. Both Sam and Chris we knew pretty well, not just from being at conferences, but we would text each other back and forth. We were friendly competitors, so we were friendly enough that it was straightforward to just shoot a text and get on the phone that same day. So and then that was the sort of acquisition process. And yes, to your point, their strategy for the most part was, hey, they're the leader in Resi, we were the leader in C&I. Frankly, I think that one of the somewhat philosophical points, and I've been meaning to ask Sam and Chris this question, my hunch is that, so you recall, they had announced a commercial product a couple times and tried to launch a commercial product a couple times. And my opinion is neither of them got much traction at all. And I think that ultimately, the fact that they did that really helped them decide to acquire us. It's because, think of it opposite, right? If they had never done it, but it was still on the roadmap, they might have told themselves, well, we could build versus buy, but we can probably build just as good. But once they had tried and realized, Helioscope is pretty sticky. People love that thing. We can't wrestle their customers away from them. It's easier for them to justify acquiring us when the opportunity came up. So that takes us to about 2 years ago. And then to your point, the products are different. I would also say that the applications are different, right? The world of residential solar and the world of commercial solar are just very different very different worlds. Residential is all about speed, standardization as much as possible, automation. I often use an analogy of a manufacturing plant, like a candy bar factory, to use the old comedy sketch example. So Aurora, residential, not just Aurora, but residential generally is ideally it's like a candy bar factory. And of course, every site is different, but you do your best to make sure every site is as close as possible to the others. Obviously in commercial, it's not like that, right? Every project is big, every project is unique, every project is going to have a unique bottleneck that's, you kind of know the world of bottlenecks, but every project is going to have its own constellation of whether it was about roof conditions or interconnection or whatever. And so it's just a different mindset for everyone going through those processes. And so that's part of why, as we were chatting kind of before, as you were just saying about there's applications of automation in both, but it's a lot more impactful in the residential part of the world because you're starting from a place where the people who are growing the fastest are doing their best to standardize and automate as much as possible, so AI helps to kind of supercharge that. Whereas in C&I, it's a relatively smaller impact of automation. And then in terms of the products themselves, one of the things I often talk about is the core design experience is probably always going to be different, because fundamentally, if the user is laying out 30 modules, you do things differently from when the user is laying out 30,000 modules. It's just a different set of way that you write the software. And so, but on the other hand, I'll give you a very recent example. We use the same LiDAR data set, and so people use LiDAR and Helioscope. Aurora's had LiDAR for many years. And that's, by the way, one of the new things in Helioscope. As of yesterday, we now have LiDAR available on our Pro plan, so any of our users today can go to the website, just buy access to LiDAR for $100 extra a month per user, and they're off to the races with LiDAR. And so that's a shared asset between both products. And the reason I say that is, or I bring that up is, recently, Aurora's LiDAR team was able to get a big upgrade to the coverage of our LiDAR data set. And guess what? Overnight, that was available in Helioscope. And so what we try to do is be smart about which things should be different, because they have to be different. The users are different, the projects are different. On the other hand, which things should just be the same, because if you've got one team building one really good asset and then we can both leverage that, it's just going to be a better product. We'll be able to ship new things faster. Again, if we had a separate Helioscope LiDAR, we wouldn't have that coverage upgrade that just came through. So, so it's the devil's in the details, because really there's about 30 different parts of the product that you're talking about, between component databases and weather databases and the imagery layers and the designer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot to it, but the reality is it's going to be kind of a hybrid approach to how we think about these products.
And so is the future of Helioscope, or is the future of Helioscope Aurora with Helioscope's capabilities?
That's probably TBD, to be honest. So, for example, at the product level, they're going to be different. But to your point, in the future, should a customer be able to pay one bill and get access to both? That's not the case today, but in the future that might be. In the future, should a customer be able to have one login and have access to both? That's also not the case today, but in the future it might be. If anything, what I would say is we are following the things that our users care about, and as of now, our users are not really asking for the ability to have one login work for Aurora and Helioscope at the same time. They're asking for designer capabilities, and we're working on building those designer capabilities. So, basically these things are definitely on the table, and we just need, and I'm sure it'll happen more over time. So again, but you hear what I'm saying. It's definitely not a no. It's just, hey, it's just pragmatic. And as soon as it matters enough to our users, it'll move up our list.
Well, in our last couple minutes together, Paul, what do you say to C&I energy professionals who are, either looking for a platform or, looking to grow the existing platform that they're using? What is on your mind, I guess, about the future of these platforms that have become such an important part of our everyday work?
Yeah. What I'd say there, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about this later today I'm doing a talk at the the Innovation Lounge.
Okay.
It's all about process. And one of the things that actually Aurora has always done a really good job of, and I'm really glad that we can draft off of this with Helioscope, is they've got a whole team of, I think of them as process engineers. So this team, we call them sales engineers. So this team will talk to a customer of ours, map out what they do, map out what are the highest points of leverage, and map out where should we automate, say, from Salesforce into Helioscope or Aurora. Of course, this applies on Resi side as well. Where should we automate from Helioscope and Aurora back into your Salesforce tenant? When, how, who's doing it, how is it triggered, who has access to it, et cetera. Those types of things are super important for, first of all, helping all of us reduce cost. In fact, I saw, for example, some MIT report, which I wasn't a super fan of, but I'm going to mention them. where they basically said that in the last 20 years, hardware cost reduction has driven something like 85% of our overall cost reduction. And so soft costs are only responsible for about 15% of our cost reduction. So I'm going to take some exception with their methodology, but ignore that and assume there's something there. So that's where I'm going, is for all of us to focus more on what processes are we doing and why, and what are we getting out of it? Because everyone competes differently. With some people, it's about white glove. With some people, it's about speed. With some people, it's about automation. There's not one right answer, but for whatever we do, there's a process underneath that, and getting smarter about, hey, what changes should we be making this year to either be a better white glove or a faster fast or a more automated automation platform. That's where I think we're going to get beyond just a 15% contribution of soft cost reduction. So that's where API tie-ins, which we've always been a fan of, right? Like to your point, we have hundreds of customers that use APIs automatically to have their data flow from Helioscope to Energy Toolbase. That's an example of what I'm talking about, but let's put that on steroids. It really should be Helioscope, Energy Toolbase, PV Bid, all these other products, and our customers' own internal processes that are in Salesforce or Oracle or Google Sheets, but really getting smart about those things and automating as much as we can is, I think, how we're going to keep the cost curve going, because hardware is only going to take us so far for the next 20 years.
Well, reducing the cost of solar, the soft cost, the hard costs, it's very, very important, right? As you and I know, it's American solar is too expensive on the global playing field, right? We need to reduce the soft costs of solar to be competitive. The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by Dinawatts. If you're a solar PV asset manager or performance engineer, you need better data and better business intelligence. With Dinawatts' digital twin benchmarking technology, you get more accurate, efficient, and faster performance measurement results. The fourth generation Dino recently completed a technical review by DNV. You can download the report at dinawatts.com. That's DENOWATTS.com. Now back to the show. Well, we're out of time. Unfortunately, it's great to see you here. Enjoy the show. And how can our listeners find you? What's your preferred way to connect with our listeners?
Probably the easiest would be LinkedIn. I try to be responsive there. I'm not perfect, but I try to be. And then other than that, that's probably going to be the best one.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Give us a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify so that others can learn about the show. And please tell your friends and colleagues about the show. There are so many people that have never heard of the Clean Power Hour. I know, shocking, but true. So please tell your friends about the show and reach out to me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with my listeners, and I love hearing from you. And hey, maybe you too can come on the Clean Power Hour someday. So reach out to me. I'm Tim Montague. Thank you, Paul Grana, General Manager of Helioscope at Aurora. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. It's been great to be here.
I'm Tim Montague. Let's grow solar. Hey, listeners. This is Tim. I want to give a shout out to all of you. I do this for you twice a week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us your time. I really appreciate you and what you're all about. You are part and parcel of the energy transition, whether you're an energy professional today or an aspiring energy professional. So thank you. I want to let you know that the Clean Power Hour has launched a listener survey, and it would mean so much to me if you would go to cleanpowerhour.com, click on the About Us link right there on the main navigation. That takes you to the About page, and you'll see a big graphic, Listener Survey. Just click on that graphic, and it takes just a couple of minutes. If you fill out the survey, I will send you a lovely baseball cap with our logo on it. The other thing I want our listeners to know is that this podcast is made possible by corporate sponsors. We have two wonderful sponsors today, Chin Power Systems, the leading three-phase string inverter manufacturer in North America, and Dinawatts, a performance monitoring platform for utility scale solar. So check out CPS America and Dinawatts. But we are very actively looking for additional support to make this show work. And you see here our media kit with all the sponsor benefits and statistics about the show. You know, we're dropping 2 episodes a week. We have now over 320,000 downloads on YouTube, and we're getting about 45,000 downloads per month. So this is a great way to bring your brand to our listeners, and our listeners are decision makers in clean energy. This includes project executives, engineers, finance, project management, and many other professionals who are making decisions about and developing, designing, installing, and making possible clean energy projects. So check out cleanpowerhour.com, both our listener survey on the About Us and our media kit, and become a sponsor today. Thank you so much. Let's grow solar and storage. The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 3-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes 3-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.